Hey there. We humans have a really complicated relationship with animals, don't we? Some we treat like family. We let them sleep in our beds. But others, well, we treat them like food. It's this weird contradiction we just live with every day. So today, we're going to dive into the fascinating psychology that decides whether we see an animal as a friend or as a meal.
It's a question you've probably thought about, right? Why do we shower one animal with love and affection, while another one ends up on our dinner plate? They're both smart. They're both social creatures. So, what's the deal? Where does that line get drawn? Is it something about the animals themselves, or is it really all about us?
And look, this isn't just some abstract philosophical thing people debate in classrooms. It's a real puzzle for a lot of us, just like this Reddit user pointed out. Even people who eat meat know that the animals they're eating are, well, animals. And that creates this little bit of an internal conflict that our brains have to figure out how to solve.
So, how in the world does our mind deal with this? To get to the bottom of it, let's talk about the mental gymnastics we perform, sometimes without even realizing it, every single time we sit down for a meal. Yeah, scientists actually have a name for this specific feeling. They call it the meat paradox. It's that uncomfortable tension that bubbles up when you hold two ideas that just don't seem to fit together. I love animals, and I also love eating hamburgers.
The meat paradox is actually a classic example of something even broader in psychology, and it's called cognitive dissonance. See, our brains just hate it when our beliefs and our actions don't line up. That mental static, that discomfort, it pushes us to fix the contradiction. And one of the simplest ways to do that is to just change how we see things.
And this right here is the #1 strategy. Because, let's be honest, instead of changing our behavior, like say giving up meat, it's just so much easier to change our perception. It's this thing called motivated perception. We subconsciously tell ourselves that the animals we eat just aren't as smart or don't feel things as deeply as the animals we keep as pets. We literally rewrite our own beliefs to make our actions feel okay.
Okay, so that's the theory, and it sounds pretty convincing, right? But is there any actual scientific proof? How would you even begin to test an idea like this out in the real world?
Well, it turns out there is. A brand new study from 2024, published in the science journal Appetite, set out to test this idea head-on. A group of researchers wanted to see just how much our dietary choices can actually bend and shape our view of animal minds and how much they matter.
The main question they were asking was simple, but it was really powerful. Does our diet literally change our morals? And what they found was pretty fascinating.
What they discovered with pescatarians, people who eat fish but not other land animals, was especially telling. When you compare them to omnivores and vegetarians, they showed the lowest level of moral concern for aquatic animals. It's a direct connection. Eating fish seems to lower how much you think they matter, morally speaking.
And this is the whole idea in a nutshell. For pescatarians, there was this huge gap between how they viewed land animals versus how they viewed aquatic animals. They had a really high level of concern for the animals they don't eat, and a much lower level for the ones they do. It's a perfect example of our brains just adjusting our moral framework to fit what's on the menu.
But honestly, this next part might be the most mind-blowing finding of the whole study. The researchers asked vegetarians and pescatarians about cows, and the result was just stunning. They rated beef cows as having more complex minds and being worthy of more moral concern than dairy cows. Now, just think about that for a second. It is the exact same animal, but depending on its perceived job, whether for meat or for milk, it completely changed how people valued its mind.
The researchers themselves summed it up perfectly. It's like we have this flexible moral compass. We are shockingly good at tweaking our beliefs about animals to line up with our behaviors. It lets us keep our diets exactly as they are without feeling that uncomfortable cognitive dissonance.
Okay, so we've seen how this all works inside our own heads. But what happens when millions and millions of people all share the exact same psychological bias? Well, that's when our flexible little moral compass starts to shape society itself.
You see, when pretty much everyone in a culture decides that one type of animal is a friend and not food, that shared bias doesn't just stay inside our heads. It grows into a powerful cultural norm, a taboo even, and eventually it can become actual law.
You want a perfect example? Look no further than the U.S. ban on dog and cat meat. In American culture, the idea of dogs and cats as companions is just incredibly strong. And that shared value translated directly into political action, moving from a bill to federal law in just a few short months back in 2018.
And we're not talking about a symbolic law either. This thing has real teeth.
The law slapped a fine of up to $5,000 on anyone who violates it. That shows you just how seriously a cultural taboo gets taken once it's actually written down in the legal code.
But the law also had a bigger international goal. By banning the practice at home, the U.S. wanted to strengthen its own position when trying to persuade other countries to end the trade. It was a way of saying, look, we hold ourselves to this standard, and we think you should too. It just goes to show how a national feeling can become a global message.
So, what's the big picture here? After this whole journey, from our dinner plates all the way to the halls of government, what have we really learned? Let's tie it all together. So here's what it all boils down to. We feel this meat paradox, that tension between loving animals and eating them. To solve it, we use motivated perception, where our diet literally shapes what we believe about an animal's mind. This is what creates that friend versus food divide. And when enough of us feel the same way, that collective feeling can actually become the law of the land.
Ultimately, as the biologist Mark Bakoff said, the way we draw these lines, what we pet, what we eat, what we protect, it says a lot less about the animals themselves and a whole lot more about us. Our choices really shine a light on our biases, our justifications, and the stories we tell ourselves to make it all make sense.
When it comes right down to it, it's all about what we choose to see.
And since we know that our perceptions aren't set in stone, that they're shaped by our habits and by our culture, it leaves us with one last big question. As our technology and our values continue to change, what new lines are we going to draw? What do you think will be on the menu and sleeping at the foot of our beds 50 years from now?